The vast emptiness of space lit up with strange lights that night, a night Dr. Kim would never forget. She had been analyzing soil samples in her Seoul laboratory, eyes burning from staring at screens for 14 hours straight, when her phone buzzed with urgent alerts. Looking up at the small television mounted in the corner of her lab, she saw the breaking news: unknown objects in Earth's orbit. "This can't be happening," she whispered, dropping her coffee mug. The dark liquid pooled around her feet, but she didn't notice. Dr. Han burst through the door, breathless and wide-eyed. "Are you seeing this? They're everywhere, over every major city." Together they rushed to the roof of the research facility. The night sky, normally dotted with familiar stars, now featured massive ships hovering silently above Seoul. Their surfaces gleamed with an unnatural metallic sheen that reflected the city lights below. Smaller craft detached from the larger, vessels descending through the atmosphere. "My God," Dr. Han whispered, "we're not alone." Within 3 days, the visitors had established contact with every world government. They called themselves the Galactic Council, a coalition of advanced species that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Their message wasn't one of friendship or exploration. It was clear and cold. Earth was now under their authority. In the emergency United Nations session, broadcast worldwide, Supreme Commander Toral addressed Earth's leaders through a translation device. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall with grayish-blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. 4 arms crossed over a uniformed chest as Toral spoke. "Your world has been catalogued as a Class 3 developing planet, suitable for resource extraction and eventual integration. Your cooperation will ensure minimal disruption to your populations. Resistance would be—" The alien paused. "Inefficient." Dr. Kim watched the broadcast from her laboratory, hands clenched into fists. The alien's condescension was unmistakable. President Park of the United Korean States attempted to negotiate. "Surely we can establish trade relations that benefit both our peoples. Earth has much to offer as partners rather than subjects." Toral's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. What humans would later learn was their version of amusement. "You overestimate your position. Our scans indicate your species has barely achieved rudimentary space travel. Your most advanced computers are toys compared to our navigation systems. You have nothing to bargain with." Within a week, enormous platforms appeared in orbit, casting shadows over major cities. The aliens established headquarters in strategic locations, always choosing elevated positions that overlooked human populations, a psychological tactic not lost on military analysts. The Galactic Council's ships deployed smaller devices around Earth's atmosphere, monitoring all communications and movement. When Brazil's Air Force attempted to approach one of the platforms, their jets stopped functioning mid-air. Thankfully, the pilots managed to eject before crashing, but the message was clear. Human military technology was useless against the A. Visitors. Dr. Kim and Dr. Han worked tirelessly, gathering what information they could about the aliens. The Council had sent survey teams to various locations, collecting samples and scanning Earth's resources. They seemed particularly interested in rare Earth elements and certain biological compounds found in rainforest regions. "Look at this," Dr. Han said one evening, pointing to satellite imagery showing alien mining operations beginning in previously protected nature reserves. "They didn't even bother negotiating rights. They just took what they wanted." Dr. Kim nodded grimly. "They've calculated everything. Our military capability, our technological development, our political divisions. But there's something they missed in their equations." "What's that?" She looked out the window at the orbital platform, visible even during daylight, its shadow occasionally passing over the city like an artificial eclipse. "Human history. We've faced overwhelming odds before. When Europeans arrived with ships and guns, when empires crushed smaller nations, when tyrants wielded unstoppable weapons, humans always found a way to resist." That night, they watched as President Park addressed the nation. His face showed the strain of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. "We will comply with the Council's demands while we assess our options," he said carefully, his words clearly chosen to avoid provoking the aliens who monitored every broadcast. "I ask all citizens to remain calm and go about your daily lives." But The message behind his words was clear to those who understood Korean cultural nuances. When he adjusted his cufflinks, a gesture his advisors had told him to avoid during serious addresses, it was a signal to certain government agencies that other plans were being activated. Later that evening, as Dr. Kim and Dr. Han watched, Hylian crafts patrol the skies from their laboratory window. She turned to her colleague with determination in her eyes. "For they see us as insects," she said quietly. "Primitive beings to be managed and harvested, but they haven't studied Earth's history very carefully. When cornered, when threatened, humans don't behave according to logical models. We don't surrender when the odds are impossible." Dr. Han nodded slowly. "So what do? We learn everything about them, their technology, their biology, their weaknesses. They think they're studying us, but we'll be studying them more carefully." Dr. Kim turned back to her microscope, where she had been examining a sample of material secretly collected from an alien landing site. "And when they least expect it, they'll learn what humans are truly capable of." Outside, the alien ships continued, their silent patrols, their lights blinking confidently in the night sky, unaware that the supposedly primitive species below was already beginning to plan their response. 6 months had changed everything. The blue skies that once brought comfort now carried the constant shadow of alien ships. The Collective, as the Galactic Council preferred to be called, had established their rule with calculated efficiency, breaking down all meaningful resistance. Within weeks, Colonel Lee pulled his worn cap lower over his eyes and adjusted the fake worker badge on his dirty jacket. From his position behind stacked supply crates, he had a clear view of the extraction facility that had once been Daejeon's technology park. Now it was an open pit mine where exhausted humans labored under the watchful eyes of collective overseers. "Water break over. Return to stations." The alien voice boomed through translators, harsh and metallic. The workers, former teachers, engineers, and office workers, shuffled back to their positions, backs bent from carrying heavy loads for 12-hour shifts. Colonel Lee made careful notes in a small waterproof notebook. This was his 3rd infiltration. This month. Beside him, Sung, a former university student turned resistance fighter, whispered, "They're moving the extracted minerals to the Northern Processing Center tonight. 3 transport ships." Lee nodded. The Collective had been systematic in their approach. First came the resource assessment teams, then the processing centers, then the quotas. Every region had to provide specific amounts of minerals, metals, and biological samples. Failure meant reduced food rations for the entire area. "They've calculated everything about us," Lee murmured, watching an overseer scan a worker for signs of stealing mineral samples. "Our strength limitations, our nutritional requirements, even our psychological breaking points." He closed his notebook. "But they've missed something important about humans." "What's that?" Sung asked. "Our determination. When everything is taken from us, we don't become more compliant, we become more dangerous." That night, moving through drainage tunnels beneath the city, Lee and his team made their way back to one of their hidden bases. What had once been a subway maintenance facility was now home to 30 resistance members, illuminated by strings of emergency lights powered by jury-rigged generators. "Colonel, you need to see this." Young, their communications specialist, waved him over to a radio set. "Dr. Kim has been trying to reach you, says it's urgent." Lee picked up the secure line they'd established through old copper telephone wires the Collective had ignored in favor of monitoring digital communications. "This is Lee. I need you at the lab immediately." Dr. Kim's voice crackled through the static. "I've found something." The journey to Dr. Kim's hidden laboratory took 3 hours. The once busy streets of Seoul were now under curfew after dark, with patrol drones scanning for unauthorized movement. Lee's team moved through sewers and abandoned subway tunnels, emerging 4 blocks from their destination. Dr. Kim's lab was hidden beneath an old hospital the Collective had cleared out and abandoned after taking all the medical equipment. The basement levels, shielded by layers of concrete and lead from an old radiation therapy room, didn't register on alien scans. "Show me," Lee said when he finally arrived, still damp from traveling through water-filled tunnels. Dr. Kim looked exhausted, but excited. Her lab coat was stained, and her hair was tied back hastily. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept in days. She led Lee to a table where a small alien device, about the size of a smartphone, sat connected to various measuring instruments. "This is part of their communication system," she explained. "We recovered it from their trash. Apparently it was malfunctioning." She pointed to a screen showing brainwave patterns. "Watch what happens when I put my hand on it." As her palm touched the device, lights flickered to life and the screen displayed rapidly changing alien symbols. "It's responding to you?" Lee asked, leaning closer. "Not just responding, it's granting access. Something about human brainwave. Patterns triggers their authorization protocols. It registers as an administrative override." Lee's eyes widened. "How is that possible?" "Pure biological coincidence. Our brainwaves operate on frequencies that their systems interpret as high-level clearance." She smiled for the first time in months. "I've tested it on 15 different people. It works for about 70% of humans, with women showing slightly stronger responses." Lee stared at the device. "So we could potentially access their systems? Their weapons? Their ships?" "In theory, yes. But we need more than this broken communicator to test it properly." She looked at him expectantly. Lee nodded slowly, understanding what she needed. "We've been monitoring patrol patterns for weeks. Their smaller shuttles follow predictable routes with minimal crew." He considered the risks. "It would be dangerous, but we need that technology." Dr. Kim finished his sentence. "If I'm right about this, it could change everything." 2 weeks later, on a rainy night that reduced visibility for both human and alien sensors, Lee's team put their plan into action. They had identified a shuttle that made regular supply runs to outlying monitoring stations, following the same route each time, through a narrow valley where mountains interfered with the collective's sensors. "Team in position," Sung's voice came through Lee's earpiece. "Charges set." Lee gave the signal. A controlled landslide, just enough to block the valley without seeming deliberate, crashed down. Minutes later, the shuttle appeared, slowing as its sensors detected the obstacle. As predicted, the small craft landed to assess the blockage. 2 alien crew members emerged, their tall forms silhouetted against the shuttle's lights. Lee's team moved with practiced precision. Tranquilizer darts, loaded with a sedative Dr. Kim had formulated based on biological samples, hit both aliens. They dropped silently to the wet ground. "Move," Lee ordered. Within minutes they had secured the unconscious aliens and taken control of the shuttle. Sung, who had studied what little they knew of alien technology, managed to power up the craft. "We have maybe 30 minutes before they notice the shuttle is off course," Lee said, strapping the aliens securely. "Get us back to base." As the shuttle rose shakily into the air under Sung's inexperienced control, Lee couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. For the first time since the collective arrived, humanity had captured a piece of working alien technology. And with Dr. Kim's discovery about brainwave patterns, they might finally have found a weakness in the seemingly invincible invaders. "They think they know everything about us," Lee said quietly, looking at the alien control panels now responding to human touch. "They've studied our bodies, our resources, our weapons, but they've never truly understood the human spirit." He touched his old military dog tags, still hanging around his neck under his shirt. "And that will be their downfall." As the shuttle disappeared into the rainy night, the first real blow in humanity's quiet resistance had been struck. The collective wouldn't notice immediately, but a small crack had just formed in their perfect occupation. And humans, as history, had shown countless times, were experts at turning cracks into chasms. The underground bunker hummed with nervous energy as resistance leaders from across Asia gathered around the makeshift conference table. The room, carved from bedrock beneath an abandoned subway station, was lit by strings of LED lights powered by generators that gave off a constant, low rumble. The air smelled of sweat, coffee, and hope, a strange combination that had become familiar over the months of occupation. Dr. Kim stood before them, dark circles under her eyes betraying weeks of sleepless nights. Her hands trembled slightly from exhaustion as she activated the holographic display they'd salvaged from the captured shuttle. "This is why the collective hasn't detected our access to their systems," she said, pointing to brain scan images floating in the air. Their technology recognizes human neural patterns as administrative overrides. It's a biological coincidence they never encountered before in all their galactic conquests. The assembled leaders, former military officers, scientists, and government officials, leaned forward to examine the floating images. Colonel Lee, sitting at the far end of the table cleaning an alien weapon, looked up with interest. "Show them the frequency match," he suggested. Dr. Kim nodded and swiped her hand through the display. New images appeared showing wavelength patterns. Human brain waves, particularly in this alpha-theta overlap region, mirror the exact authentication frequencies used by high-ranking collective commanders, she explained. When we touch their systems, they read our neural output as command authorization. It doesn't work for everyone. About 70% of humans trigger the response, but it's enough for what we need. "And they have no idea?" asked a resistance leader from Japan, his face scarred from an early confrontation with collective forces. "None," Dr. Kim confirmed. "In their arrogance, they never considered that a primitive species might accidentally possess a biological key to their security systems. They're so convinced of their superiority that they haven't even investigated the security breaches we've caused. They blame system malfunctions." Colonel Lee stood up, setting down the alien weapon he'd been examining. "And there's something else working in our favor," he added. "They've grown comfortable. Their security protocols are becoming routine. Their patrols follow predictable patterns now. The first month they changed routes daily. Now they follow the same schedules for weeks." "Complacency," said an older woman who had once been a general in the Korean army. "The downfall of every occupying force throughout history," Lee nodded. "Exactly, they believe they've broken us. 500 kilometers away in another underground facility beneath the ruins of old Busan, a different kind of resistance work was underway. Chief Engineer Choi supervised a team of 30 scientists and engineers as they disassembled and studied pieces of collective technology. The room resembled a strange hybrid of Earth electronics lab and alien spacecraft, with human computers, connected to glowing collective components. "Careful with the power coupling," Choi warned as two engineers removed a cylindrical device from a damaged alien shuttle engine. "Remember what happened last time?" Everyone winced, remembering the explosion. That had claimed 3 lives during early experiments. The learning curve with alien technology was steep and often deadly. Choi wiped sweat from his forehead and checked his tablet, where Dr. Kim's latest research findings had been securely transmitted. The neural interface discovery had accelerated. Their work tremendously. What had once seemed like magic now followed understandable patterns. "Team leaders update," he called out. A young woman stepped forward holding what appeared to be a modified smartphone. "Communications team reporting. We've successfully intercepted and decrypted local collective transmissions. We can listen to their command channels now." A man in his 50s, formerly a weapons designer, spoke next. "Defense team reporting. We've adapted their energy weapons to work with human neural interfaces. Limited ammunition still, but working. One by one, the teams reported progress that would have seemed impossible just weeks earlier. Humanity was learning, adapting, and preparing. Meanwhile, in Pyongyang, the situation had reached a breaking point. Food supplies, restricted by the collective as punishment for missing resource quotas, had run dangerously low. Thousands gathered in the central square, their protest beginning peacefully with people simply standing in silence, holding empty food containers. The collective's response was swift and merciless. Orbital weapons fired what they called compliance beams into the crowd. Hundreds vaporized instantly, while others fell screaming, their nervous systems overloaded with pain. A student named Min, hiding in a nearby building, recorded everything on a modified camera designed to bypass collective surveillance. Within hours, the footage spread across the planet through the Resistance's hidden communication network. Old radio frequencies, physical message runners, and brief bursts of encrypted data through compromised collective satellites. President. Park viewed the massacre footage from his mobile command center, a constantly moving convoy of unmarked trucks that changed location daily to avoid detection. His hands clenched into fists as he watched his people being slaughtered. "Enough," he said quietly to his advisors. "We've gathered sufficient intelligence. We've prepared as much as we can. I will not watch more of our people die while we wait. His chief of staff looked concerned. Sir, Dr. Kim requested 3 more weeks to complete the neural interface upgrades. People don't have 3 weeks, Park responded firmly. The resistance is ready enough. Send the authorization code. Operation Thunderstorm begins in 72 hours. The encrypted message traveled across continents, reaching resistance cells worldwide. In bunkers and hidden facilities, weapons were distributed, plans finalized, and last-minute training completed. On the collective's command ship hovering above what had once been Beijing, Regional Commander Morth reviewed security reports. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, the collective expression of dismissal, as he read about unusual energy signatures, detected near human population centers. Primitive desperation, he told his subordinates. Their scientist may be attempting to restore their disabled defense systems. A junior officer tentatively suggested, perhaps we should investigate these anomalies more thoroughly, Commander. Some readings suggest our own technology might be impossible, Morth interrupted. These creatures can barely comprehend how our systems work, let alone manipulate them. Their most advanced computers are toys compared to our neural networks. The officer hesitated, then nodded and withdrew. It wasn't wise to challenge commanders, especially when they had made up their minds. What none of them could imagine was that in underground facilities across the planet, humans weren't just comprehending collective technology, they were improving. Till Engineer Choi's team had discovered that the quantum-linked systems the aliens relied on could be modified to work more efficiently with human neural patterns than with the collective's own biology. It's almost poetic, Dr. Kim had said when she saw the test results. Their technology works better with our minds than with theirs. The tools of our oppressors will become the weapons of our liberation. As the 72-hour countdown began, resistance members moved into position worldwide. Weapons were distributed. Modified collective communication devices were activated. And in space, unnoticed by the arrogant conquerors, tiny changes in their systems began to appear. Security protocols temporarily suspended, sensors recalibrated, communication channels slightly altered. The storm was gathering, and the collective, in their supreme confidence, had missed the warning signs completely. The rain fell in sheets across Seoul as crowds gathered in the central plaza, herded there by collective enforcers for the ceremony. Giant screens had been erected showing the alien symbol, a spiral of stars being consumed by a central point, while translation speakers announced that today marked Earth's privileged integration into the collective resource network. In the gray morning light, humans stood silent and soaked, their faces empty of emotion as they waited for Supreme Commander Torol to appear on screen. Children clutched their parents' hands, old people leaned on walking sticks, and no one spoke. After 9 months of occupation, public displays of resistance had been beaten out of them, or so the collective believed. Deep beneath the city, Dr. Kim sat surrounded by modified alien technology in the Resistance's main command center. Screens showed similar gatherings in cities worldwide. She checked her watch, an old-fashioned analog timepiece chosen because it couldn't be tracked or hacked. Final status report, she said into her headset. Voices responded from around the globe, each confirmation making her heart beat faster. London teams ready, Cairo standing by, Sydney in position, Rio teams green. She took a deep breath and looked at the resistance fighters around her. Scientists, former office workers, students, people who had learned to become warriors. It's time, she said simply. Her hand hovered over the activation panel they had spent months building, a hybrid of Earth and collective technology. For a moment, doubt flickered across her mind. They would only get one chance at this. If they failed, the screen above her showed a collective officer kicking an elderly man who had collapsed in the rain. The sight hardened her resolve. Doctor. Kim pressed her palm against the neural interface. The system recognized her brainwave pattern and activated. Initiate planetary disruption grid, she commanded. Across Earth, hidden transmitters powered up simultaneously. The technology, reverse-engineered from collective communication systems, sent precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulses that exploited a fundamental flaw in alien sensor systems, a vulnerability they had never corrected because no primitive species had ever discovered it before. Aboard the collective command ship, alarms blared as screens went dark. Commander Morth's 4 eyes widened in confusion. "Report," he demanded, his translator making his voice sound even harsher than usual. "All planetary sensors offline," an officer responded, frantically working controls. "Communication with ground forces interrupted. We are blind, Commander." "Impossible," Morth hissed. "Initiate emergency protocols. Switch to backup systems." "Backups responding the same way, sir. Something is creating interference across all frequencies." In the human gathering areas, the ceremonial screens flickered and died. The collective guards looked up in confusion, their hand weapons raised uncertainly. That moment of hesitation was all the hidden resistance members needed. Throughout the crowds, people pulled hidden weapons from under coats and backpacks, modified. Collective stunners that had been carefully smuggled in over weeks. The once docile crowds transformed in seconds as trained resistance fighters disabled the alien guards with precision strikes. Colonel Lee's voice crackled through hidden earpieces worn by resistance leaders. "Phase 1 complete. Beginning orbital. Assault." At hidden bases around the planet, captured and modified collective shuttles rose from their concealment. Some emerged from underground hangars, others from dense forest canopies, and most surprising to the aliens, several burst from the ocean depths where they had been hidden for months. "They're using water as a shield," gasped a collective sensor operator, as the readings finally came through. The human vessels were hiding underwater, invisible to our scans. Commander Morth couldn't process what he was seeing. The shuttle pilots, humans, wearing neural interface headsets, flew with the precision of veteran collective navigators. How could primitives master their technology so quickly? Colonel Lee led the first assault team, his shuttle approaching the main orbital platform above Seoul. His neural link with the ship felt natural now after months of practice, the ship responding to his thoughts as if it were an extension of his body. "Remember your training," he told his strike team through the neural comm. "Hit fast, secure the control center, deploy the override." The shuttles docked with surprising precision, their airlocks connecting to the platform's emergency ports, another design flaw the resistance had discovered. When the doors opened, human fighters moved in perfect formation, wearing modified collective armor and carrying weapons that responded to their neural commands. The aliens on the platform, caught completely off guard, barely had time to reach for their weapons. Some managed to send desperate messages to the command ship. "The humans, they're using our technology against us. How is this possible?" As the orbital platforms fell one by one, President Park emerged from hiding. From a captured collective communication center, his face appeared on screens worldwide, replacing the alien symbols. "People of Earth," he began, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "Today we strike back against our oppressors. For months we have endured their cruelty, their theft of our resources, their contempt for our lives. They believed us too primitive to resist, too simple to understand their technology." In orbit, Colonel Lee's team secured the main platform's control center. Dr. Kim's specially designed override device was connected to the central console. When activated, it sent a cascade of commands through the collective's own network, turning their orbital weapons away from Earth and toward their own ships. "Impossible," Commander Morth whispered again as he watched defense systems turn against his fleet. "This cannot be happening." On Earth, President Park continued his address. "Today, humanity reminds the galaxy that technological advancement without wisdom leads to defeat. While the collective merely observed us, we studied them. We learned their weaknesses. We adapted their technology. In cities worldwide, humans overwhelmed the confused alien forces. The resistance had planned meticulously. Priority targets were secured within the first hour, communication hubs fell within the second, and by the third hour, not a single collective ground commander remained at their post. On the Korean peninsula, thousands watched in awe as collective ships in orbit began exploding. their own defense systems turned against them by human neural commands. Cheers erupted from crowds that hours earlier had stood in defeated silence. Dr. Kim monitored everything from the command center, directing teams to counter collective attempts to regain control. The aliens' confusion gave them a critical advantage. The Haust collective had no contingency plans for an uprising of this magnitude. They had never imagined humans capable of mounting such a coordinated attack. "Sol platform secure," Colonel Lee reported through the neural link. Moving to Phase 3. From the captured platforms, specially trained teams deployed to the main collective ships, using the aliens' own transport systems against them. Each team carried multiple override devices designed to spread through the vessel's networks like viruses. Commander Morth ordered a retreat as his ship's systems began failing around him. "Impossible," he repeated, watching helplessly as humans appeared on his own command deck. "You are primitives. You cannot comprehend our technology." Colonel Lee stepped forward, removing his neural interface helmet. "You made a fundamental mistake," he told the alien commander. "You judged our worth by our technology, not by our determination. You measured our weapons, not our will to survive." Across Earth, the skies cleared of collective ships as their remaining vessels jumped to faster-than-light travel, fleeing the catastrophic defeat. On the ground, humans emerged from hiding places and shelters, looking up at the empty sky with a mixture of disbelief and hope. President Park concluded his address with words that would be remembered for generations. "Today we have won our freedom, but this is only the beginning. The collective will return with greater forces. Yet now they face a truth they never expected. When you push humanity to the edge of extinction, you create the most dangerous force in the universe, a species with nothing left to lose, and everything to fight for." As night fell across a liberated Earth, the resistance forces began preparing for what would come next. They had won the first battle in spectacular fashion, but the war for humanity's future had only just begun. 3 weeks of relative peace had given humanity precious time to prepare. Celebration had quickly given way to determined action as people worldwide worked to master the alien technology left behind. Cities still bore the scars of occupation, extraction facilities gouged into once beautiful landscapes, orbital weapon strikes leaving craters where resistance had been strongest. But amid the destruction, hope flourished like stubborn weeds through concrete. Dr. Kim hadn't slept properly in days. From the command center of the captured orbital platform, now humanity's primary defense station, she monitored the long-range sensors they'd reconfigured from collective technology. "They're coming," she announced, her voice steady despite the gravity of her words. The room fell silent as everyone turned to the main display. At the edge of the solar system, hundreds of red dots appeared, a collective armada far larger than the invasion force they'd defeated. Colonel Lee studied the tactical display, his face grim but determined. "Right on schedule. Their faster-than-light capabilities match our projections." He turned to the communications officer. "Alert President Park. It's time." On Earth, preparations that had seemed frantic and desperate suddenly appeared methodical and purposeful. This wouldn't be like the first encounter, where humanity had been caught unprepared. For 3 weeks, they had been implementing a plan formed during months of studying their enemy. The massive collective armada slowed as it approached Neptune's orbit. Supreme Commander Zorik, the highest-ranking member of the collective leadership, ever dispatched to a rebellious world, stood on the bridge of his flagship. 8 feet tall with mottled blue-gray skin and 4 arms clasped behind his back, he exuded absolute confidence. "Send the advanced scouts," he ordered. "I want detailed scans of their defenses before we begin the punishment bombardment." 5 sleek collective vessels broke formation, accelerating toward Earth. Their mission was simple: assess human defensive capabilities and transmit data back to the Armada. What they didn't expect was waiting just beyond Mars. As the scout ships passed the red planet, they triggered hidden human devices, small undetectable satellites that had been positioned throughout the solar system. These devices injected specially designed viruses into the scouts' communication networks. Viruses created by humans using their unique understanding of how collective systems interacted with human neural patterns. On the lead scout ship, alarms blared as systems failed in cascading sequence. The collective captain watched in horror as control panels went dark, life support flickered, and navigation systems locked onto a collision course with Mars's surface. Emergency transmission to Fleet Command, the captain shouted. But it was too late. The virus had already used that very communication system to spread to the waiting armada. Aboard his flagship, Supreme Commander Zorik received only garbled static instead of scout reports. Then his own systems began behaving erratically. "Impossible," he growled, an unconscious echo of Commander Morth's last transmission before the human uprising. How could primitives create a virus that affects our quantum-encrypted networks? On the captured orbital platform, Dr. Kim and Colonel Lee monitored the chaos unfolding at the edge of the solar system. The virus wasn't designed to destroy the collective ships, merely disable their offensive capabilities and communication systems. They wanted the armada intact for what came next. "Ready for final phase," Dr. Kim said, her hand hovering over the neural interface she had designed. "This would be humanity's most audacious move yet." Colonel Lee nodded. "Do it." Dr. Kim placed her palm on the interface, her mind connecting directly with the captured platform systems. The technology felt natural to her now, almost like an extension of her body. Through it, she activated the transmitter they had spent weeks calibrating, a device powerful enough to send a message not just to the approaching armada, but to every corner of collective space. "This is Dr. Kim of Earth," she began, her words translated into the collective language and dozens of other alien tongues. "To all species living under collective rule, I bring news. Their control is broken here. Earth stands free." The transmission included data packets containing the neural interface designs and virus codes, weapons any subjugated species could use against their oppressors. "We offer alliance to all who seek independence," she continued. "The collective is not invincible. Their technology has weaknesses we have discovered and exploited. We will share this knowledge freely with any who wish to claim their freedom." Across thousands of stars, on hundreds of occupied worlds, the message reached beings who had lived for generations under collective dominance. Species who had forgotten what freedom felt like suddenly saw a path to liberation. Supreme Commander Zorik watched in mounting fury as the transmission spread through his compromised fleet. He knew immediately what this meant for the collective's carefully maintained empire of fear. "Prepare my shuttle," he ordered. "I will speak to these humans myself." The meeting took place on neutral ground, a small station positioned between Earth and the Moon. President Park, Dr. Kim, and Colonel Lee represented humanity. Supreme Commander Zorik arrived with 4 advisors, his massive frame dwarfing the humans as they sat around the negotiation table. "Your rebellion is impressive, but futile," Zorik began, his translator giving his words a metallic edge. "You have won a single battle through trickery and exploitation of an unforeseen biological coincidence. Our empire spans thousands of worlds. We will simply adapt our technology and return with greater force." President Park remained calm, his hands folded before him. "You've misunderstood the situation, Commander. We're not here to negotiate our surrender." "Then why have you requested this meeting?" Zorik demanded. "To offer you terms for your withdrawal from our solar system," President Park replied, "and to explain why further conflict would be unwise." Zorik's 4 eyes blinked in the collective expression of disbelief. "You speak as if you hold the advantage." "We do," Dr. Kim said simply, activating a holographic display. It showed real-time footage from across collective space, uprisings on 12 different worlds, collective ships disabled in mid-flight, control centers overrun by formerly docile subject species. "Your control was already fragile," Colonel Lee explained. "Your empire too vast, your subjugated peoples too numerous. You ruled through fear and technological superiority. We've removed both advantages." President Park leaned forward. "You misjudged us, Commander. Humanity doesn't follow your evolutionary models. We don't surrender when defeat seems logical. That unexpected quality is why you failed here, and why you're now failing everywhere." For perhaps the first time in his long life, Supreme Commander Zorik felt something approaching uncertainty. These humans spoke with the calm assurance of victors, not the desperate bravado of doomed rebels. "What are your terms?" he asked finally. "Complete withdrawal from our solar system, recognition of Earth's independence, and a non-aggression pact." "That includes all worlds that choose freedom from collective rule," President Park stated. "Impossible. The Council would never—" "The Council is losing control as we speak," Dr. Kim interrupted, updating the holographic display to show more worlds in open rebellion. "You can fight a war on thousands of fronts, or you can accept the new reality." Within a day, the agreement was signed. The collective armada withdrew from the solar system, their weapons still disabled by the human virus. Supreme Commander Zorik returned to collective space to face a rapidly disintegrating empire. Over the following year, delegations from formerly subjugated worlds arrived at Earth. Some came seeking technology, others offering alliance, and all marveling at how a supposedly primitive species had accomplished what none had dared attempt for millennia. In what had once been Seoul's Central Plaza, the same place where humans had stood in the rain awaiting their formal integration into the collective resource network, President Park now addressed representatives from 47 alien species. "Today we establish the Galactic Concordat," he announced. "Not an empire, not a collective, but a true alliance of equals. Each world self-governing, each species respected for their unique qualities and contributions." Dr. Kim and Colonel Lee stood among the honored guests, watching as the alliance became official. The technology they had adapted now served to connect rather than control, to share knowledge rather than extract resources. "They never understood what makes humans different," Dr. Kim said quietly as she watched the proceedings. "They measured advancement by technology alone." Colonel Lee nodded. "They couldn't comprehend that our greatest strength isn't in our weapons or our science. It's in our spirit," Dr. Kim finished. "Our refusal to accept defeat, our ability to find hope in darkness, our determination to stand together despite our differences." As the ceremony concluded, the representatives turned their gaze upward, where the night sky revealed stars that now represented not distant threats, but future friends. The species once dismissed as primitive had not only secured their own freedom, but had changed the course of galactic history. Humanity had proven that the true measure of advancement wasn't technology, but the wisdom and courage to use it justly, a lesson the galaxy would not soon forget.